Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Mac, and today we're taking a look at the most common mistakes I see in my coaching sessions for Elemental Shaman. I pretty much just took a list of the most common mistakes or questions I see and split them up by Mythic Plus and Raid. So we're going to take that list, go over them all, so make sure you don't make those same mistakes. But I want to be upfront here, in that none of this is going to be some sort of galaxy brain insights. These are all generally, for the most part, boring fundamentals that people skip over because they want to optimize cool tricks first. But the truth is, if you fix even one of these, your performance will jump in a way that no rotation, tweak, or trick is going to match. But with these scenes set, let's get into it. Let's start with Mythic Plus first, because this is where I see the biggest gap between players in my sessions. And honestly, cooldown usage is probably 80% of every issue I see for any coaching session about Mythic Plus. Elemental lives or dies on effective cooldown usage, and that is not an exaggeration. Ascendance and Stormkeeper are the spec. Everything else around those windows is just filler. So if those two cooldowns are landing on bad packs or at bad times, your damage is going to feel bad no matter what else you do. Now, I will say that this is also partially out of your control, specifically in pugs. If your tank pulls weird, stops mid-pull, or kind of chains into something that you weren't expecting, you can get caught in a pretty bad situation with nothing to send into them. And this is ultimately just the reality of pugging sometimes. In a pre-made group, this is way easier because pulls are generally planned, you know what's coming, and you can pre-position and set up your cooldowns for those big important packs. So if you're pugging and your cooldowns feel a bit awkward, don't beat yourself up too much about it. What you can do to kind of mitigate this is ask the tank for the route, and if they provide it, great. If they don't, you're kind of at their mercy. But if you do get the route, you can kind of use that framework to plan your Ascendance window around something other than just vibes. Realistically though, being able to read pug tanks and what their plans might be is a skill on its own, albeit not a fun one to have to learn, but it's one that you should also be getting used to as you're doing keys. But let's talk about something that is completely 100% generally in your control, which is overcapping. And I see this one constantly. Tempest caps at 2 stacks, Stormkeeper caps at 4, and Maelstrom caps at 150. If you overcap on any of those, you're leaving damage on the table, full stop. The most common spot for this to happen is right after you press Ascendance. Ascendance gives you that free Tempest stack and dumps a bunch of Maelstrom into your bar with those instant lava bursts. So if you press Ascendance with too much Maelstrom already, or with a Tempest proc sitting there already, you immediately are in danger of overcapping and losing a bunch of value before your burst window even starts. I made a whole video about this a week ago, so I'll kind of keep this short here. The cleanest opener is to press Ascendance at no more than 50 Maelstrom. Then you send Chain Lightning before anything else in AoE. That single Chain Lightning relieves pressure on your Stormkeeper charges, gives you breathing room for additional procs to come in from your Tempest, and stops you from overcapping the second you hit your burst. After that one Chain Lightning, you just flow right back into your normal priorities. It feels weird the first few times you do it because every part of your brain is screaming at you to press Tempest immediately, but trust me, that one Chain Lightning is worth so much more than sending Tempest quickly. Now, the third biggest mistake I see is Stormkeeper. A lot of players treat Stormkeeper like it is a rigid 45-second cooldown and they have to send it exactly the second it comes up. The reality is, you don't have to. You have about 30 seconds of wiggle room in order to match it up with your Ascendance anyways, so why not use that awkward 30 seconds? In a dungeon, that wiggle room is huge because it gives you the freedom of where you can send it. If you have Stormkeeper available and the current pack is already going down pretty quick, don't waste it on cleanup. Save it and hold it for up to 30 seconds and line it up with that next pack you go into. Because going into a fresh pack with Stormkeeper already loaded in the chamber means you get early momentum, your Maelstrom generation is much faster, and you can spend Earthquake Elemental Blasts almost immediately. Going into a pack dry feels awful and directly delays your first spender by at least 4 to 5 seconds. And 5 seconds of ramp doesn't sound like a lot, but I don't think you truly understand how slow elemental ramp is when you're going into a pack dry. Multiply that across an entire dungeon and you have lost a lot of meaningful damage. So the rule is kind of simple here. If a pack is going down or the next pack is going to be within 30 seconds, just hold Stormkeeper so you have that early momentum for your next pull. It might sound pretty small and simplistic in nature, but that small change can make a huge difference in dungeon performance. But there is also one more M+ mistake I need to cover before we move into Raid because this one's a bit sneakier than the others. It might sound simple, but it's actually a super common mistake I see a lot of people making that they don't even realize they're making, and that's Flame Shock. I know, Flame Shock is like the most basic button in the spec, but stay with me because this is one of the most easy mistakes to make that has a massive impact on your burst window specifically. Flame Shock caps at 6 targets. Flame Shock itself doesn't necessarily do great damage, but it's important specifically because of the Inferno Arc talent. This gives you a 10% damage bonus on anything affected by Flame Shock, and that 10% is pretty massive. The mistake I see people making is pressing Ascendance and just trusting Flame Shock will land on their priority target. Ascendance applies Flame Shock on up to 6 nearby enemies, but it doesn't guarantee your priority target is one of them. If you have a priority target on the edge of a pack and Ascendance spreads to 6 trash mobs near you, your priority target might not get Flame Shock at all. And now your entire burst window is missing 10% damage on the most important target, and that is a massive loss for your funnel output. Luckily, the fix is as easy as pressing Voltaic Blaze on your prior target before Ascendance to guarantee Flame Shock gets on that target. Or ultimately, just making sure you're targeting that prior target before you go into a pack. This guarantees your funnel target gets Flame Shock and Ascendance just refreshes it, making sure you're getting the Inferno Arc bonus on the mob that actually matters. One simple button press or proper targeting equals locked in extra 10% damage. It's not a flashy fix, and it's not necessarily even an obvious mistake, but it is one of the easiest ways to clean up your Ascendance windows in M+. But real quick before we move on to the raid section, because this is the part of the video where I'm supposed to do the responsible content creator thing and mention my Patreon. If any of this is hitting close to home with you and you actually want to work through your own logs and pulls, I do one-on-one elemental coaching over on Patreon, which is where this entire video came from. So if you want a little bit of one-on-one extra help, go ahead and check out the Patreon, and if not and you want to just get back to the video, let's go ahead and talk about raid mistakes. The number one thing I see in raid is the most boring fix in the world, and that is positioning mistakes. Almost all of the low damage cases I review during raid comes down to one thing: players not being comfortable with mechanics. Elemental is a heavy, hard casting spec. A huge portion of our damage comes from lightning bolts, chain lightnings, elemental blasts, all of which require us to stand still and just hard cast. If you are constantly reacting to mechanics, dodging things at the last second, or just don't know where you should be standing, your cast uptime tanks. And when your cast uptime tanks, your damage tanks. There is no rotational trick that fixes a player who is constantly having to move. And I want to make a distinction here because this is something a lot of players I don't think truly understand and is the core of the whole problem. There is a difference between reacting and positioning, and most players think they're positioning when they're actually just reacting. Reacting is when a mechanic goes out and you move. You see the swirly, you see the soak, you see the cone, and you respond to it. Positioning, however, is when you are already standing in the right spot before the mechanic happens because you knew it was coming. Reacting means you're interrupting a cast to move, but positioning means you finish that cast and step into the next spot without having to miss a global. Those two things might look initially identical to a viewer watching a stream or a video, but the damage difference between the two is enormous during a fight. And the only way to really shift from reacting to positioning is preparation and repetition. It's the difference between pull 5 and pull 50. On pull 5, you don't know what's coming, so everything is just naturally going to be a reaction. But on pull 50, you have the muscle memory built up of where to be, what to cast, when to cast it, and where to step next when the next mechanic is about to go out. That's not talent or necessarily skill, it's just repetition and memory. The more prepared you are going into these earlier pulls, the shorter you can make that learning curve. Make sure you understand the boss fight before you pull, as best you can. Know the mechanics and know where the boss is going to be moved generally throughout the course of the fight. If you know where the puddles spawn, and you know what side of the room the boss is going to be on and it's going to be safer for ranged, then you know where you need to be when a soak is going to come out so you don't have to move across the entire arena. All of that pre-planning is what lets you skip that reactive phase and just jump straight into positioning. And once you're positioning, you can stand still, cast, and actually use your tools like Spirit Walker's Grace for the important windows when you need to use it instead of getting caught with your pants down. You want to be the player who plans, not the player who reacts. And if you do that, your damage will go up immediately without changing a single thing about your rotation, guaranteed. And this brings me to my second raid mistake, which ties pretty closely to the positioning point because it's also about getting the most out of your hard casts when you have them. And that's how players use Master of the Elements, specifically with Elemental Blast. People seem to overvalue dumping Master of the Elements onto Elemental Blast, and it makes sense. Elemental Blast is your spender, it hits hard, and slapping a 15% damage buff on it just feels like the obvious play because it's your spender, it's what you should be doing. But it's not actually that simplistic, and treating Elemental Blast as your default Master of the Elements buff target leaves a lot of damage on the table because it's not actually that high on the priority list. The actual priority list for Master of the Elements is Tempest, then a Stormkeeper empowered Lightning Bolt, then Elemental Blast, and finally a Lightning Bolt. Elemental Blast only comes in third after 2 other spells. It's still good, but it's not near even the top half of the list. This mistake makes sense and follows pretty naturally from the priority order being kind of misunderstood as a whole. People lock in a Lava Burst into Elemental Blast as a rhythm for their default pattern, and then when a Tempest proc legs up, they don't have a Lava Burst charge ready to generate that Master of the Elements buff for the actual spell they want to send it on. So they cast Tempest effectively naked with no buff on it and lose a ton of value on their single highest priority button in their entire rotation. The fix here is actually really simple and really clean once you flip how you think about it. Pretty much, always send a Lava Burst immediately after you cast Elemental Blast. That's it. That's the entire fix. You're effectively playing slots, hoping for a Tempest proc on the back end of that Elemental Blast. Sometimes you win and Tempest lights up, other times you lose and nothing procs, but the potential upside of empowering a Tempest with Master of the Elements outweighs the technically safer play of empowering an Elemental Blast every time. Because if you always send a Lava Burst immediately after Elemental Blast, you get into a rhythm where you never have a Tempest that isn't empowered by Master of the Elements. You're already sending that Lava Burst before you even see if you got a Tempest proc. That buff is then ready to go, and if Tempest comes up, you fire it with Master of the Elements active without ever having to even think about it. And if Tempest doesn't proc, sure, you lose a little damage, but it's less lost than the potential upside of an empowered Tempest, so you come out ahead over the course of an entire fight. The other huge benefit of doing it this way is you remove the hesitation of waiting to see if a proc occurred. You're not pausing mid-rotation to check if you got that Tempest proc and figure out this optimal rotation. You're just sending Lava Burst on autopilot after every Ele Blast. This effectively removes all of the thinking time per cast and builds muscle memory into your rotation that frees up brain space for other important things like positioning and mechanics. It's just one of those things you get into a rhythm with. Build it in and your Master of the Elements uptime on Tempest goes from inconsistent to effectively automatic every time. But that's pretty much it. None of these are flashy, and none of these are going to make you look like some big galaxy brain optimizer, but they will ultimately help your output. They are ultimately just fundamentals, boring, repeatable habits you can build into your rotation until they become automatic. But that's all I have for today. If this video helped you out, make sure to like the video. It really does help the channel out a lot, and if you want more Elemental or general WoW content, make sure to subscribe as well. I've also been streaming over on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, so if you want to hang out, ask questions, or just watch while I do raid or keys, feel free to stop by and say hi. And if you want to support the channel a bit more directly, I've got a Patreon link below where I offer coaching and additional content, along with a Discord where you can talk about the spec, ask questions, or just hang out with the community. But yeah, that's all I got for this one, so thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I will see you in the next one.